We've got new ToonTown images, a fascinating development with the Big Thunder Trail tunnels that you won't want to miss, plus Matterhorn, Cotino, and more, all coming up next on Fresh Baked. Hi guys, David here with Fresh Baked, and I've got great news. MiceChat has a new update this week, and they've got new ToonTown images. Thank goodness for MiceChat, right? It looks like they've been busy, lots of interesting things to check out, and we're going to start with Goofy's house. In our last update, we found Goofy's house completely under scaffolding. Today, it has emerged with a fresh coat of paint, looking vibrant and bright. This photo was taken the day before ToonTown closed, and you can definitely see the colors were faded a bit, a little muted, much brighter blues here. But otherwise, when ToonTown reopens, Goofy's house looks like it's going to be pretty much the same as it was, from the outside at least. Pulling a little wider next, we can see that his backyard is still very much gone, as too is Toon Park. This will eventually be the home of a large grassy area with that enormous tree as a centerpiece. No progress in the area where Roger Rabbit's fountain used to be. Not sure actually what they have planned for this area, as it's a bit out of frame in the concept art. Looks though like they've dug a ditch that's going to run to the land's entrance and maybe possibly even extend down to that path that was created for guests with wheelchairs and EVs. Also to the right, heading towards that building where you can detonate the fireworks. Now normally when you see ditches like this, it's for water or electrical conduit, and it probably is. Very curious, though, what they might have in mind, why that's necessary given its configuration. I have a feeling, something just tells me that this is show-related. I mean, it still probably is either water or electric, but it's show-related. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, the entrance marquee for Runaway Railway has progressed to its next phase. In our last update, we saw sort of a layer of purple, and if memory serves, that was a fire protection layer, but I could be mistaken. This gray and white layer looks closer to a final layer just before they put on the finishing textures and paint. And actually it looks like they've done a lot of finishing all around this area. Here's something interesting to the right of the entrance to Runaway Railway. Some kind of concrete cylinder. Looks permanent, could be temporary. This is right about where you would have found the Christmas tree out in front of City Hall. The gazebo would have been right about where the garbage bin is in this photo. I don't know, it's an interesting observation to make. Not sure what possible use it could have here in this area. We'll keep an eye on that also. And then we'll head next to Mickey and Minnie's house. That's Minnie's house in the purple, Mickey in the red there in that lower right-hand corner. Scaffolding everywhere. Most likely, again, new paint. Scaffolding also on the green hillsides. And though it's just an optical illusion created by the scaffolding, seeing those hills in this way really makes me want to walk around up there. How cool would that be if they had somehow created a means for guests to walk up into those hills and look down upon ToonTown? Kind of reminds me a bit of the hillsides in Super Mario World, where there are certain areas where guests can walk around in an area just like that. But again, it's just an illusion created by the scaffolding, but that would be neat. Now, where that black squared section is now, that's where the old Mickey fountain, the one with all the sound effects, that's where that fountain used to be. Really curious what kind of contraption that is they're installing here. In the concept art, it's just a grassy area with a single tree on it. So to me, that means expect something wonderful here, because there's no reason for them to just plant, to put a random tree that has no features on top of whatever it is. That thing looks complicated. Whatever it is, I'm certain it is more than just tree and grass. They've also dug up another square section right next to it. Nothing in this space in the concept art, just blacktop and sidewalk as best as I can tell. So I'm not sure what purpose that might be for, and it looks like there's also more of that black installation on the other side of Mickey's house to its right as we look at it, right about where you would be entering Chip 'n Dale's treehouse, which is still gone, of course. And by the way, still no tunnel to Galaxy's Edge. It's really not happening, guys. Sorry to report. But again, I do wonder what they're going to do with that space, because right now it's just dirt at the moment, and there's no discernible installation going on here. But they have to be doing something, because why would you remove Chip 'n Dale's treehouse unless you had some other idea for that purpose? Certainly, it's not going to be just blacktop, right? So I'm curious to see what they're doing here, because the concept art again was no help at all. Meanwhile, to its left, Gadget's Go Coaster completely under scaffolding, as well as the tracks. This is supposed to be rethemed when the land reopens, but there's still no word on what it might be. Concept art again, no help. Still no scaffolding around Donald's boat. They've done a complete paint job, I think, on Goofy's house, it seems like, but no work at all for Donald. Actually, I take that back. It does look like they've not just removed that little lake that fronted the boat, but did they fill it in? There is that dug up area here, but that would have been blacktop in the before times. The lake itself appears to be filled in. There was a lake, and you cross over that little tiny bridge to get into Donald's boat. But it looks like they filled that space in with dirt. Surely Donald's boat won't be docked on land, right? That duck needs a water landing. So here's to hoping that they have something in mind. Actually, in this case, the concept art is a help. It does look like there's water around the boat. So perhaps they're going to install something new. It just seems weird, I guess, to fill it up if they're just going to dig it out again. I mean, unless I'm crazy. And of course, I am by no means an expert on these things. I'm just a guy who loves to guess and get things wrong a lot. And with that, I think that covers things here in ToonTown. That was a lot of fun. And I can't wait for the next installment from MiceChat. Great job, guys. I don't know how you're doing this, but please do keep doing it. Let's go next to Big Thunder Trail to see the status of the mysterious tunnel work being done along the rivers of America. As before, not a lot to discern on the tunnel closest to the Native American village. All we can see here so far, and still, is just that scrim. But I mentioned in the intro that this is a section that you won't want to miss. About halfway around the bend of the river, have they cleared some brush? Did they actually take a weed whacker to this area? Look, okay, here's some footage from August 2nd. It's not the same exact angle, but close enough to compare. There's the cougar and the rocks on August 2nd. There's the cougar and the rocks on August 10th. So they have a very similar line of sight. If you look through that line of sight behind those areas, it is a much cleaner view. Am I crazy, or have they removed a bunch of trees and bushes and weeds? That's the much cleaner line of sight there. What's even more interesting is that because of this, we can now see this. Did they clear that brush for that reason? So we could eventually see whatever it is that they're doing here? Why else would they clear this area? Assuming, again, that I'm not crazy, and they did clear this area. I mean, they so did, right? I literally said just a week or two ago, watch this area and see if they take a weed whacker to it. I mean, I was joking when I said that, but it sure looks like that's exactly what they did. So what does this mean? The only thing I could think of that apart from being something far more mysterious, is that they had to clear that space in order to do whatever work that they were doing back there. In order to get a crew back there and do whatever it is they're doing, they had to clear that space. But that, again, begs the question, what is so important back there that they needed a crew back there to do whatever it is that they're doing? Why is that so important? I'm going to let you guys ponder that question while we finish seeing what they're doing up there on the hill. That looks like new rock work, not a refresh of the existing work, but rock work in addition to what was already there around the tunnel exit. Again, I can't be sure, but it looks like it's further up the hill from where the tunnel exit was, or is. Very curious as to why this is needed. It's certainly not exactly, it's not on stage. The whole thing is just a total mystery. Okay, so there's the scrim, and then here's the shot we saw from the past couple of weeks. Color has been added here as well, but now, where it wasn't before, it is now covered in scrim. Fascinating. I can't wait. I cannot wait to see this. I know, I'm positive, though, I'm going to be let down by what the end result is. It's going to be no big deal, but still, you got to admit, this is a really interesting turn of events. I was joking, and I said, watch them take a weed whacker to that, and they took a weed whacker to it. The grass is gone. Okay, now here's a real tell. When that boulder is gone, then we can have a conversation. Okay, let's go next to the Matterhorn, which is now closed and behind walls. We don't know specifically what they're working on or how long they'll be doing it. I can say only that it is my best guess that it will be just a month or two, and then the ride will be back open again. We did, though, find some scaffolding up in a couple of places on the mountain exterior, which suggests, cosmetic work. But I also do think they're working on the interior structure of the mountain at the same time. If you have a minute when you're in the park, take a walk around the mountain and find these posters up on the walls. They're They're a fun little history lesson about the Matterhorn. I always enjoy reading about how the mountain was made and from where it was inspired. You can also, but stay tuned, you can watch a video we did a while back about what was there before, Holiday Hill, and how it evolved into the attraction that we know today. Very fun video, very fun topic. Stay tuned at the end of this video for that. And then our last stop today will be in the desert, Rancho Mirage, and Cotino. It's been a few weeks since we've flown over. These shots courtesy of friend of the show, Desert Bird Media. Awesome drone footage, guys. Thank you very much. The property is still in that clearing phase, removing all the brush, etc., and putting on that green layer of hydro seed. Most of the lot is in this state now. They do seem to have isolated their efforts on this one little section here. You've got trucks doing their dance. Here's an interesting little berm they've created. Probably nothing, not for any purpose, but something to observe here. And by the way, for those wondering why we're even here, why we're looking at an empty lot in the middle of the desert, Disney is building a residential community. It's a new line of business for them, building Disney-themed or Disney-inspired residential communities. And eventually, this dirt lot that we're looking at right now will look like this, Cotino. Follow us on Instagram at _FreshBaked, on Twitter at FreshBakedDisney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at FreshBakedDisney. If you like our show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/FreshBaked. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, everybody. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. And Fresh Baked. Disneyland is full of history. You take a legendary attraction like the Matterhorn, for example, and you just know that there's a story there. But not just about the attraction itself. In some cases, like with the Matterhorn, there's more to tell from well before the attraction ever existed. That's Matterhorn Mountain, an image that has served as an icon of Disneyland for more than half a century. So much so that I would be willing to guess that there is a significant percentage of fans of the park that believe it to have always been there since the opening in 1955. But obviously, no, there was a time before the Matterhorn. There was a time at Disneyland when the Matterhorn didn't exist. No toboggans, no Herald, a time when there was no mountain at all. Well, actually, there was a mountain, a hill. And that's our story for today. This is not a Matterhorn video. This is a video about what was there before the Matterhorn. Before the Matterhorn, there was Holiday Hill. And in this episode of Fresh Baked, we're going to go back in time to learn more about this odd little piece of Disneyland history and how it one day evolved into the now legendary Matterhorn Mountain. The Matterhorn opened on June 14th, 1959, but before then, there was Holiday Hill. Now, you may never have heard of it because it wasn't much more than its name. In fact, it was probably less than that, as it actually had nothing to do at all with holidays, or any holiday for that matter. Now, if you know me, you know that there's two things that I love very much: Disneyland construction and dirt. And that's just how Holiday Hill began. It was born of the dirt dug up for the foundation of Sleeping Beauty Castle and the surrounding moat. It's the original Mount Spielberg, but you probably should be a diehard Fresh Baked fan in order for you to understand that reference. So Disney has this large pile of dirt sitting on a portion of the Disneyland property that was not being used. At this time in 1955, there was no plan for this section of land next to Sleeping Beauty Castle. Now actually, let's just sit and reflect on that thought for just a moment. There were parts of Disneyland that were undeveloped, vacant, unused. Can you even get your head around that? Because I cannot. So they have this unused piece of land atop which sits this huge pile of dirt, and that's the way it sat for a little while, just a pile of dirt. But to remove the dirt from the property was actually a pretty expensive endeavor at the time, and since there were no plans, Walt just said, let it sit there. And let's pause again to reflect on that, because there's many of us want to sort of wax poetically about modern Disneyland versus 1950s era or 60s era Disneyland and think about how much wonderful or more wonderful it was back then. But the reality is that the park was largely undeveloped, unkept, and in some ways quite unattractive, i.e. a huge pile of dirt sitting right next to Sleeping Beauty Castle. But I digress. Let's get on with the story. You've got this huge pile of dirt, and often would be the case that when it was a windy day, or the dirt would get swirled around and spread across the park in various ways. So Walt sought the help of his horticulture team, Bill Evans, legendary Bill Evans, to plant some shrubs and other landscaping in order to compact the dirt to keep it in place a little better. Now, initially, guests were not allowed on the hill. It was not an attraction per se. There was a fence around the perimeter of the hill, but that didn't stop guests at the time. Very often, you would find some that would hop the fence and try to scale the top of this 20-foot hill. And in this way, they could, gaze upon the vista of Disneyland, which I must say would have probably been quite amazing. Or maybe for some, it was just the excitement of jumping a fence to climb the top of a hill and do something that you weren't supposed to do. Or maybe it was just to find a tree so that you could take your date up to the hill under the tree and make out for a little bit, as is the legend. Actually, let's take a look. Let's take a look at some photos of the area to get a better idea of just what was Holiday Hill. You can see that in this shot that the area wasn't exactly fit for guests. Just dirt and shrubs, and probably not at all safe. Here's a shot from inside the walls surrounding the hill, which again is not exactly an impenetrable fortress. And while we're at it, here's a shot of Walt Disney himself standing on top of Holiday Hill. Now, I'm not sure what the occasion was though, but there he sat. Now, eventually Walt decided, since they had no plans to remove the hill, and it was going to be there for a little while, they might as well make something of this hill to dress it up a little bit. At first, something a little bit more ambitious was planned. This was going to be the original location of the now infamous Rock Candy Mountain. The mountain was supposed to incorporate parts of Casey Jr. and Storybook Land, and kind of like in the same way the mini land that they sort of were planning for Indiana Jones, or in other cases and other things that you've seen in Disneyland history. They had kind of this infatuation with mini lands. But it was going to extend both of those attractions, both Casey Jr. and Storybook Land. But it wasn't going to be built in Storybook Land. The actual Rock Candy Mountain was going to be built on the site of Matterhorn Mountain. Casey Jr. would weave its way around the mountain, while the canal boats would go through some caverns underneath the mountain. And would you believe that the actual early model, the early attempt at building Rock Candy Mountain was with actual candy? And that's what doomed the attraction in the end. Disney legend John Hench said that the ride would look unappealing to guests. He called it a tummy ache waiting to happen. And Walt agreed eventually. And the project never even broke ground. So in the meantime, while they tried to figure out what they were going to do with this hill, still not Holiday Hill, Walt went back to Bill Evans and the landscaping team, and they decided to dress the place up just a little bit more so that it would be something that might approach an actual attraction, something that would actually then turn out to be Holiday Hill. The landscaping was upgraded and actual walking paths were added, complete with handrails and everything. The hill formally became a walking path that guests could scale to the top of the hill and then back down the other side, probably towards the Nemo Lagoon. Now, before we continue, I got a few more photos that are really going to fascinate you. These are some of my favorite images from the park, and I'll show you why. Just look at this view. What I wouldn't give to see that today, and not just because we can't go to the park, but because this is a view you don't get today. The closest thing we get to it maybe is the monorail, but it's so obstructed. The view is so obstructed with new development, trees, etc., that you can't see. You can see all the way through to the other side of the park from the top of this hill, like in this shot. That's Fantasyland from on top of the hill, and you can see the show buildings and the tents and everything, and you can see all the way past that, which I don't even know what those hills are now today. But I mean, it's got to be, Tom Sawyer's Island, Critter Country, that kind of thing. This is from on the ground in Tomorrowland. The Skyway buckets had a tower. That tower that you see right there is right on top of Holiday Hill. And again, this is not a view we get today. Imagine now a Matterhorn and a monorail in this shot. Here's a shot looking down at Holiday Hill from one of the Skyway buckets. And there again is that tower that we were just talking about. And you can see the many trails and handrails there available for guests. Here's a view from inside one of the Skyway buckets looking down at Holiday Hill. And you can see there's a road down there. I'm guessing that's the same path we walked today on our way to Tomorrowland. So on their left would be the Nemo subs. And I'll conclude with this shot right here, which is going to blow the minds of some of you watching this episode of Fresh Bake right now as it did mine, because I literally had no idea. Thank God for Dave Landweb. This is a shot of the horseless carriage driving around Holiday Hill. And if you want to know why that's fascinating, because just look at the landscaping here. This is how it looked back in the day. Dirt everywhere, not very well kept, an unfinished piece of business. But secondly, why is there a horseless carriage this deep into the park? But it's true, back in the day, the Main Street vehicles would go past Sleeping Beauty Castle and around Holiday Hill. I cannot get my head around this. This is just a part of Disneyland that I had no idea existed. And in spite of the fact that it's not as well kept as I would have liked, it's not as beautifully maintained as Disneyland is today, I still would very much like to go back to this time and to be able to experience something like this, just to know what it's like to keep on riding that horseless carriage deep into the park. Now, to continue on with our story, we know that Walt was ambitious, always with new ideas, and those ideas often started with something small and then grew as his imagination grew, just like Disneyland. In fact, you could even say that Holiday Hill is a microcosm of Disneyland in its story, its progression from something small to something very, very ambitious and impressive. But we're still not at the end of our story, because there's a little bit left in between Holiday Hill and the Matterhorn. You see, when Walt first decided he wanted to do something with that hill, to make something of that hill, his first idea wasn't Matterhorn. His first idea was actually a Wild Mouse coaster, like Goofy Sky School. The Wild Mouse coaster was a new development in engineering for thrill rides at the time. And their idea was to put one of these rides on the Holiday Hill site, complete with fake snow. They had an idea for something, like a snow-topped mountain, just not the Matterhorn, at least not yet. But of course, the Wild Mouse coaster idea was quickly too small for Walt. And as fate would have it, at the time, Walt was quite infatuated with Switzerland, with all things Swiss. And they were even in the middle of filming Third Man in the Mountain, a film that takes place or features the actual Matterhorn mountain. So again, Walt and his team quickly pivoted from something small, like a simple coaster, to something far more ambitious. Something that met the standards of Walt's creative vision. Something extra. A pile of dirt that evolved into Holiday Hill and then grew and grew and became more Disney in its scope. Not an extension of Casey Jr., not a simple coaster, but something that nobody had ever seen before. Nothing near as amazing as the Matterhorn. It's as Disney a story as can be told, in the same vein as the Haunted Mansion or the Pirates of the Caribbean or something like the Monorail. An historic attraction with a wonderful history that includes something before it even came to be, something as innocuous and unknown as Holiday Hill, but a very interesting and cute backstory.